Tim has always been too tall, too skinny, and too orange. His mother is not very emotional, while his father, James, used to be a university professor who now enjoys reading and playing table tennis. His uncle Desmond is a bit strange and likely has Alzheimer's, and his sister Catherine, also known as Kit Kat, is a free spirit. The family has shared many happy times together, both at home and on the beach in Cornwall, England. Tim's parents throw a New Year's Eve party, which Tim doesn't really want to attend. He and his friend Jay accidentally knock over a table, spilling drinks on some guests. Kit Kat ends up with a guy named Jimmy Kincaid, while a pretty blonde girl shows interest in Tim. When everyone starts counting down to midnight, the girl leans in to kiss Tim, but instead, he shakes her hand and wishes her a happy new year. The girl is disappointed and sad. The next morning, Tim meets with his father. James shares a big family secret with Tim, which his father had told him when he turned 21. Apparently, the men in their family have the power to travel through time. Tim is shocked and doesn't believe it at first, but he asks how it works. James tells him to go into a dark place, close his eyes, clench his fists, and think of a specific moment in his life, and he'll go back to that time. However, there are limits. He can only travel back to moments in his own life, meaning he can't kill Hitler or sleep with Helen of Troy. Tim decides to test this out by going into the wardrobe in his bedroom. He does exactly what his dad said, and suddenly hears the song Mr. Brightside playing loudly. He realizes he's back at the New Year's Eve party wearing the same outfit. This time he avoids bumping into the table, and when the countdown to midnight happens, he grabs the blonde girl and kisses her, making her happy. Tim returns to the present, amazed, and tells his dad. His dad asks what he plans to do with this power, and Tim says he wants to use it to get a girlfriend. In the summer, Kit Kat's friend Charlotte comes to stay with the family, and Tim immediately falls for her. While she and Kit Kat are sunbathing, Charlotte asks Tim to put sunscreen on her back. Excited, Tim tries to squeeze the sunscreen tube, but accidentally squirts too much on her. Embarrassed, he runs inside, goes into the closet, and returns to the same moment to act more calmly. This time, he smoothly applies the sunscreen to Charlotte's back. On Charlotte's last night with the family, Tim goes to her room to ask her something. Before he can speak, Charlotte tells him not to ask anything about love, as Kit Kat had warned her he might. However, that was exactly what Tim was going to ask. Although she finds him sweet, Charlotte tells him he should have made a move earlier, not on her last night. So Tim goes into the closet next to her room and travels back a month, to when she was midway through her stay, to ask her out. This time, Charlotte is more interested, but says they should wait until her last night to see how she feels. Eventually, Tim realizes that no matter how many times he travels back in time, he can't make Charlotte fall in love with him, and she leaves, breaking his heart. After summer ends, Tim moves to London to become a lawyer. He moves in with a family friend, Harry Chapman, a grumpy man. Tim starts working at a law firm and becomes friends with a young guy named Rory, who often hangs out with Tim as he continues his search for a girlfriend. One night, Tim's friend Jay takes him to a restaurant where they are set up with blind dates in a dark room. Tim spends the night talking to a girl named Mary, who has an American accent, while Jay talks to her friend Joanna. Tim and Mary get along well, while Joanna seems uninterested in Jay. After dinner, Tim sees Mary outside and is captivated by her beauty, although she doesn't think she's very attractive. Tim compliments her dress and hairstyle. Before Mary and Joanna leave, Tim gets Mary's phone number. When Tim returns home, he finds Harry upset because one of the actors in his play forgot his lines, which ruined the performance. This makes Tim decide to go back in time to attend the play and change things. He goes to one of the lead actors backstage and encourages him to review his lines. Although the actor is rude at first, he does look over his script. During the play, this actor performs perfectly and gets applause from the audience. But another actor freezes on stage, who apparently was the guy who forgot the script. Tim goes backstage and holds up cue cards for this actor, allowing him to remember his lines and receive applause as well. After the show, Tim tries to call Mary, but her number is missing from his phone. He rushes to the restaurant where they met, but the host tells him Mary and Joanna already left and didn't leave any contact details. The next morning, Harry reads a great review of his play, but what catches Tim's attention is an ad featuring Kate Moss. He remembers chatting about Kate Moss with Mary when they met. Hoping to find her, Tim visits a museum with a Kate Moss exhibit every day, but with no luck. Finally, Kit Kat comes to help him, and one day, Mary shows up. Tim approaches her, but she doesn't recognize him. He tells her he knows her name, but it makes her uncomfortable, so he leaves embarrassed. Kit Kat encourages him to go back and try again. This time he talks to Mary and Joanna, who let him join them for lunch after he convinces them he's not weird. During lunch, Tim learns that Mary has a boyfriend named Rupert. Rupert joins them, and Tim starts asking questions about how they met. He finds out it was at a party Joanna threw the week before at her flat. Tim uses this information to go back in time. He travels to the party and finds Mary sitting alone by the window. He talks to her, a little awkwardly at first, but then he convinces her to leave the party for dinner. This prevents Mary from ever meeting Rupert. On their date, Tim finds out that Mary works for a book publisher, and they talk about Kate Moss again. After dinner, Tim walks Mary home, and they kiss. She invites him inside, but their first time together is awkward. Tim goes back in time to try again, and things go better the second time. He tries a third time, being more confident, and they both feel satisfied. Tim and Mary officially start dating and spend several months together, shown through a montage of their romantic moments at the train station as music plays. One day, Mary's parents come to visit from America, but she surprises Tim with this news right before they arrive at their apartment. She warns him that her parents are very conservative and that he shouldn't mention their intimate life. However, when they greet her parents, Tim blurts out that they don't have oral sex. Embarrassed, he goes back in time and fixes the situation. During the meal, Mary tells Tim that she loves him one evening. Tim and Rory go to see a play, and Tim spots Charlotte with her friend Tina. After the play, Tim goes over to say hello to Charlotte, who introduces Tina as her girlfriend. Tim mistakenly assumes Charlotte is a lesbian and rejected him because of that. Charlotte corrects him, saying that's not what she meant by girlfriend. Embarrassed, Tim goes back in time to undo the awkward conversation, but he still messes up by making a comment about people misunderstanding the word girlfriend. It turns out that Tina really is gay, but she's not romantically involved with Charlotte. Tim time travels a third time and decides not to approach Charlotte at all. However, Charlotte sees him as he's leaving with Rory. She chats with him, then goes to dinner with Tina, but quickly returns to invite Tim to join her, ditching Tina. They have dinner together, and afterward, when Charlotte invites him to her place, Tim realizes what's happening and stops. He tells her there's something important he needs to do. Tim rushes back home to Mary, who is sleeping. He wakes her up to propose, but she's too tired and half asleep to give a proper response. Tim goes back in time again, hires a jazz band, and makes the proposal more romantic. This time, Mary says yes, and thanks him for not proposing in a big public way. Tim and Mary visit his family to share the news. He finds Kit Kat, who tells him she's been fired from another job. She runs into the living room, excitedly tackling Mary and kissing her on the cheek. During dinner, Tim announces that he and Mary are getting married soon, and they're also having a baby. The family is thrilled by the news. That night, Tim and Mary begin planning the wedding, from picking the song Il Mondo for the event to choosing the venue, deciding on Tim's best man, and where they will go for their honeymoon. On the day of the wedding, it starts raining heavily, but despite the bad weather, everyone enjoys the event. At the reception, Rory, the best man, gives an awkward speech, prompting Tim to time travel and change his best man to Harry. But Harry makes rude comments, so Tim goes back again and picks Jay. Unfortunately, Jay's speech is full of inappropriate jokes. Tim finally chooses his dad as his best man, but even his dad's speech is lackluster. James then time travels himself and gives a heartfelt speech, saying he's only loved 3 men, Uncle Desmond, B.B. King, and Tim. Soon after, Mary gives birth to their first child, a girl named Posy. They move into their own house, even though it's a bit expensive, but they are happy. A year later, on Posy's first birthday, Tim's family gathers, but they are still waiting for Kit Kat. Instead, Jimmy Kincaid shows up and says he had a fight with Kit Kat, who had been drinking. Tim and Mary rush to the hospital and find out Kit Kat was in a car accident because she drove while drunk. Tim goes back in time to bring Kit Kat to his house before she gets into the car. He takes her for a walk on the beach and talks to her about her problems with Jimmy. Tim then reveals his time-traveling secret to Kit Kat and takes her back to the New Year's Eve party, where she first met Jimmy. Kit Kat is shocked to find herself in her old clothes, just like Tim was when he first time-traveled. Tim stops Kit Kat from approaching Jimmy, and they watch as Jimmy flirts with another girl. Realizing what a jerk he is, Kit Kat walks up to him and punches him in the face. Tim takes Kit Kat back to the present, and she now remembers being with Jay, which makes her much happier. Tim is glad to see this change and goes home, but when he plays with his daughter Posy, he's shocked to find she's now a boy. Confused, Tim goes back in time to the day Posy was born to talk to his father. James explains that since Tim changed the timeline when helping Kit Kat, it caused a different child to be born. Tim realizes that to have Posey back, he must undo the timeline where Kit Kat is with Jay. He returns to the original timeline, meaning Kit Kat still gets into the car accident, but this time, Tim and Mary stay by her side in the hospital. Kit Kat promises to break up with Jimmy and focus on her job. Before leaving, Tim encourages her to talk to Jay, who has always liked her. Back in the present, Posey is there again, and Tim happily plays with her. He tells Mary that he wants another baby, but Mary doesn't want to go through the experience again. Despite this, they have another child, a boy named Jeff. One evening, as Tim and Mary prepare to go out for dinner with Mary's publisher, she keeps changing dresses, feeling dissatisfied with how she looks. Tim reassures her she looks beautiful in anything, and she finally settles on the first dress she tried on. When she asks where Posey is, Tim says she's downstairs. Unfortunately, Posey has coloured all over the publisher's manuscript and put it through the paper shredder. Mary is furious, and as Tim tries to sneak off to fix things with time travel, she stops him. The phone rings, and when Mary answers angrily, she quickly apologises after realising it's Tim's mother. Tim takes the call, and his expression changes to one of worry. Tim and Mary go with Kit Kat to visit their family in Cornwall. Kit Kat runs inside crying while Tim speaks to his mother, who says she is not interested in a life without your father. Tim's uncle Desmond reveals that James has lung cancer. He tells Tim how happy he felt when James said he loved him on Tim's wedding day, and how this diagnosis makes him feel terrible. When Tim talks to his father, he learns that James has been time travelling to extend his life and spend more time with family, reading many books in the process. James then shares a final secret with Tim. Tim narrates that his father gave him a two-part plan for living a happy life. The first part is to live each day as it comes, facing all the normal stresses and challenges. The second part is to relive the day, but this time, appreciating the small moments and the people around him. Tim follows this advice, first going through an ordinary day at work, then reliving it with a more positive outlook, even helping his friend Rory enjoy the day more. James's funeral day arrives, and Tim time travels to spend one last moment with his dad, telling him he's coming from the funeral. They sit together as James reads a passage from a Charles Dickens novel. After the funeral, Mary tells Tim she wants a third child. Tim agrees, but he realises this means he'll have to stop time travelling to visit his father, as having another child will change the timeline for good. Over the next 9 months, while Mary is pregnant, Tim visits his father every day through time travel. As Mary's due date approaches, Tim visits his dad one final time. They play table tennis together, and when Tim says goodbye with a kiss, James understands what it means. They travel back to Tim's childhood and spend a day together at the beach. Tim and Mary's third child is born, a girl named Jo. Kit Kat and Jay also get married and have a child of their own. By this time, Tim has decided to stop using time travel, as his life now feels perfect. He kisses Mary in bed before taking his slightly older children to school, content with living each moment as it happens. And that's where this amazing story ends with happy ending. Don't forget to subscribe and press the bell icon. Have a wonderful day. Take care.